Good evening and welcome to Socialist Telly and Labour Left roundup of the political events of the last few days, with a particular focus on the, disastrous is probably too kind a word, results for Labour in the local elections and the Hartlepool by-election. And the events that have spun off from that. And then we'll be looking at what it looks like when there is a bit of leadership around, and the very exciting Howard Beckett launch last night and the responses that have come into that, as well as the number of endorsements and branch nominations that he's already received in that. So thank you very much for joining us this evening. I'm delighted to have Bonnie Craven and Damien Worley here, Cornish Damo, from Socialist Telly. So they're going to be helping me to do a bit of analysis on what's been going on, but I don't think we'll have any shortage of things to talk about. Damo, give us your first thoughts for the last couple of days, please.
Well, it's been a game of two halves, hasn't it? It's been a fantastic week for Howard Beckett. His launch was an absolutely epic event. I want to give a big shout out to my mate Nicola James, who did fantastically well as a speaker on that launch. Well done to her. I know she's not altogether too familiar with the old camera gig and speaking to camera and all the rest of it, but she did brilliantly. So I just wanted to give a big nod to her. And yes, the nominations are coming thick and fast for Howard. He's from all corners of the country, as we said. And the biggest one, of course, most notable one that I think that I've seen the last couple of days has been the Broughton one, Airbus Broughton in Wales, biggest Unite branch in Wales, and they plunked for Howard by a margin, I understand. But alternatively, of course, to that, we've had the local elections, and it's been catastrophic. It's been the worst local election results for Labour that I think I've ever seen. There's bar none. And although there's been some notable exceptions to the disaster that has unfolded, these have been in areas where predominantly socialism has not been a dirty word, and where people have actually stood up and said, we stand for something, this is what we want to do, laid out policies in their local areas, and they've committed to them and have been judged on them, and have come through that with some remarkably bumping the trend results, essentially. But for the most part, it's been a really, really bad showing. And that rests with the Labour leader. As much as he might prefer to scapegoat others, sack others, or promote them, depending on who you're asking, the buck stops with him. And sadly, although he stood up and said, I will take responsibility for the results, he's done everything except do that. So massive questions need to be asked of that. And the biggest question is on my mind at the moment is, when's the leadership challenge coming, Labour people? Because bloody hell, we need one.
Well, it looks like that might not be, could not be too long. But Bonnie, give us your thoughts on it first before we get into all that, please.
Okay, so I'll start on the local election results that we had across the country. I think it was the biggest set of elections held in the country outside of a general election. And I've seen lots of predictions that if it was a general election, we would have lost a number further of seats, strengthening the Conservative government that we already have. But I think it's really interesting to look at, obviously I'm in London, the forecasts for the Mayoralty of London was that Sadiq Khan would win very clearly, I suspect, based largely on the absolutely abysmal candidate the Conservatives decided to put forward. And there were a lot of stories that the Conservative Party had withdrawn funding from him because he was just so diabolical. There's no other word for it. And yet, we got to a situation where Sadiq Khan, the incumbent, let's remember, it's always easier to win a campaign if you're an incumbent than an insurgent. He ended up getting elected on the second preference of people's votes. And to me, that seems like a very clear sort of comment, actually, a protest against the things that have happened under his watch in London. Obviously, a lot of things with regards to transport, congestion charge, the LTNs, all of those. Everyone accepts that they were forced on him by the Conservative government. We get that. However, there was an awful lot I found of local activists that were just not prepared to do the legwork we ordinarily would do for a Labour mayoral candidate. And me personally, I was very upset because just recently he signed off on an agreement to downgrade our 2 nearest local fully acute hospitals, which I think is the worst act of self-harm that can happen in the middle of an election campaign, to agree that we can lose services that are so stretched, particularly in the middle of a pandemic. Is absolute lunacy. And I'm not surprised that I struggled to get activists out locally to go and campaign for him. And yet the other thing is, where we had strong candidates and we knew what they stood for, Andy Burnham offered a different narrative to Kiestarma, who basically has got no narrative to give whatsoever. Sadiq says, I agree with Keir. But in Wales, the Labour vote held up, and that's because we've got a really strong socialist leader of the Labour Party in Wales.
Yeah, Mark Drakeford, I think, put about 10,000 votes on top of his majority. I mean, he's quite happy to stand up and go, I'm a socialist, and put forward socialist policies. And Keir Starmer is quite happy to put forward pledges as well, but he doesn't actually keep to them. There's been a lot of chatter actually on social media today that says he should refresh his mandate based on the results that he's had to secure his position once more against anybody that might want to mount a challenge, and that actually he should put together a new mandate because he actually didn't stick to the one he was elected on in any way, shape, or form. He did deceive the electorate. I don't think it's too strong a way of putting things. He said, I was going to do this, I was going to do that. I've got my 10 pledges here. He broke the law. He said he was going to promote unity. He's been the most divisive leader going, to the point he's almost split the party irrevocably in two. And we have one side of the equation constantly attacking the other, all while saying, oh, well, we need unity. Well, you can't have unity when you have one side constantly attacking the other, trying to purge the other, and the left saying, okay, we want to work with you, we're happy to work with you. Too often the SCG perhaps have said, yeah, we'll come along, we'll work with you, we want to try and help you, and instead all they get in return is bile, essentially. I mean, look at the response from Peter Mandelson off the back of these election results. His answer to it is to go even harder, even faster in the direction that Starmer's already gone in. I mean, where's the logic? Look at the numbers. Look at the results. This is what you've achieved based on what you have done over the last year. It has not worked. Now, change your tune, start putting some policies on the table, and start bringing the party together, or get out. Because you're not the right man for the job.
It's looking like he's wanting to double down on the stupidity that's cost us so many votes and so many seats in councils and local authorities across the piece. I'm really perturbed by the fact that he dismissed Becky Long-Bailey when she stood alongside our teaching unions. We're supposed to be a party that's founded by our trade unions, albeit the NEU is not an affiliated union. They still represent a huge number of crucial key workers, and they deserve more support from the party that was created to represent them. And then, after saying, as you said, Damo, he's gone out and said, oh, I take full responsibility for this. And the very first action he's taken is to sack yet another woman from the front bench, a woman who was incidentally elected to a position.
Yes.
Well, I think, that's been, on the night before even the results were coming in, we saw, I forget which one it was, one of the front bench, non-entities that there was at Hartlepool, or fronting up at Hartlepool for the party when they were expecting bad results. And he said, well, voters don't want excuses, and then went on straight on to try and blame it on Jeremy Corbyn. So, it's this kind of, it's like when David Cameron used to say, I've been absolutely clear, and full well that means he's lied about it. So that was that was about the state of it. But it's spinning off into consequences already. So we've seen this, you mentioned the 10 pledges demo, and the next article on my list to write for Squawk Box is the fact that the 10 pledges have disappeared, so where he was linking to them on Twitter, apparently, if you try and click on that now, it's a 404 page not found error, because he doesn't want to be held to what he promised.
That sums up Starmer's policies full stop, doesn't it? Really, he might as well just write 404 page not found, because that's been his political position since he was elected.
Well, that and trying to piggyback off the success of other people's actual resistance, like the Marcus Rashford thing, where Labour was trying to kind of claim that we did it, and you just think, well, there wasn't any we about that, or well, apart from Marcus Rashford and his supporters, I guess. But we're seeing this spinning off into consequences because I've seen very amusingly Laura Smith already saying that Kiestarma should be testing his mandate because the platform that he ran on that he ran on last year has been so completely shredded. But we've also found out just this evening that certain soft left and Labour right figures are already ringing around trying to rally support for an Angela Rayner bid and hoping to leverage the any sympathy for her because of the way she's been treated. And personally, I wouldn't to have much. But I think Kiestarma's behaved atrociously, but that doesn't put her in the right. But they're trying to kind of piggyback onto that and say let's mount a challenge and trying to rally the 40 votes or thereabouts that they would need in order to be able to trigger a contest while Starmer's clinging on for grim death. And I think, well, I would be astonished if there's any kind of support on the left for Angela Rayner. An MP told me that she'd burned her bridges with the left with the conduct that she'd done on a number of different issues, wanting to suspend, and I quote her, thousands and thousands. And it wasn't, the party should suspend. It was, I will suspend thousands and thousands of members because they were refusing to just accept that the whip had been withdrawn from Jeremy Corbyn without wanting to debate that and vote on it in their local Labour meetings, etc. So Kiestarma seems to be facing some kind of consequences, and he may also face some other more interesting ones as well. In terms of, it looks like one of the few successes that Labour might have in the local elections is a potential win for Tracy Brabin in the West Yorkshire Metro Mayor elections as well, where if she wins that, then that will mean her stepping down as an MP. And another by-election for Kiestarma in an area that isn't necessarily going to be any more sympathetic to his, and I hesitate to use the word leadership, than Hartlepool has been. So let's talk another by-election. Is that something that he would welcome? Is he going to think he can redeem himself in this, or is he going to be, is he going to get another drubbing and have even more pressure on him to step down?
If Keir applies his so-called forensic skills, he will enact an entirely different strategy and actually support a truly left candidate for that election. We cannot afford to lose a single other seat. So I would like to propose to Keir Starmer he considers standing or supporting the candidacy of Laura Smith or Laura Pidcock for that seat. If we want to keep it, that's the only way it's going to happen.
If he wants to try and go down the road of reconciliation and actually unify the party, start actually doing something that shows that he's actually meaning it, because words alone, I don't think anybody would believe him anymore. I think trust in Keir Starmer's leadership is evaporated. But if he wanted to actually do something proactive to demonstrate a willingness to reconcile the party, then putting up somebody such as Laura Pidcock or Laura Smith, should they want to, would go a long way towards that, yes. But I think he's going to be viewing this by-election as a bit of a poison chalice. Yes, Tracy Brabin may have won that mayoral contest, but by stepping down as an MP, it's another by-election, hot on the heels of what's happened in Hartlepool, and I just can't see him changing the people that he's listening to. He's still going to have the Prince of Darkness withering along in his ear, and he's still going to be spilling the same crap he was spilling 20 odd years ago. That is yesterday's game.
The Prince of Darkness, in case anybody's not aware, the Prince of Darkness is a reference to Peter Mandelson, who has today been reported as saying that that one of Starmer's first actions must now be to purge the left wing from union leadership, etc. And I have a little message for Peter Mandelson on that, because the Labour movement, with including particularly the unions, formed the Labour Party in the first place. The Labour movement is its backbone is still the union movement, And for all that the right wingers have suborned some of the unions are still currently at the present time the only real hope for any change in this country, because they're not seeing any opposition at the political, the parliamentary level to speak of. And so Peter Mandelson, if you're watching this, and I think he has tuned in on this program before, shove that idea up your powdered behind where it belongs, because it shouldn't have the sun shining on it, and I'm sure that will be the best place for it. So
I think he's looking at it through the wrong end of the lens, isn't he, Steve? Because
is what? Sorry.
He's looking at all this through the wrong end of the lens, because what he needs to remember is the fact that the trade unions fund the Labour Party to a huge degree. Our money in the Labour Party should never come from private donors, corporations, and so on. The majority of the money funding our party should be the cleanest money in politics, which is money that comes from the trade unions. And if he thinks in a position of a former MP and spin doctor for Tony Blair, of all people, that he can tell the trade unions who should lead their movement, he's got it completely upside down.
Yeah, and I think it's very, it's ironic at the moment that in the Unite leadership contest, which we'll come on to in a bit, but we've seen, 3 out of 4 candidates are campaigning on the basis that, the union movement shouldn't be interfering in the Labour Party. And yet we're seeing the Labour Party, kind of the chief advisor now, as he seems to have become to the Labour leader, publicly, as it seems, demanding that, that Labour go and interfere in the Labour Party, that Labour go and interfere in the unions. So, that's a one-way street, isn't it? That they're allowed to interfere in what we're doing in the unions, and I count myself in that as a long-term union member and activist. But we're not supposed to say boo to a goose. And Howard Beckett, thank God, is their nightmare scenario where, and that's their phrase for it, apparently, that if he wins, he's going to make their life a lot more difficult in terms of them trying to sell us all down the river to the powers that be, and, have the establishment running even what's supposed to be representing the workers. And, if any of those people planning to try and do this want to have a little word with me, I'll suggest some other places where they can shove it as well.
It can't be emphasized enough. People need to realize, whether you support Labour or not, the Labour Party was created by the trade unions to give voice in Parliament to the workers that they represent. The Labour Party is the political arm of the trade union movement. It is as simple as that. And anyone in Labour, especially, who is touting the opposite, that we should pay no attention to the unions when they fund us, when we only exist because of them, has no place in the party. They are not Labour. And Peter Mandelson and his ilk, we can just sod off back to his crypt, frankly. But in what way is he contributing to society in any meaningful way at all? In none. In what way is he advising Kiestarma in any way that is going to be positive? None, because it's never been his politics. His has always been the politics of negativity and smear, and to run people down and to just be the worst. I can't, people left the Labour Party in their droves. The party nearly went bankrupt under Blair because of the leadership of figures like him, who did give 2 fingers to the trade union movement and essentially to members across the country. And here we have a Labour Party that's taking their cue from this kind of politics again. We can't allow it to fester and persist this time. We're all better informed. We're all more knowledgeable now, and we have social media largely to thank for that. But this is
well. You say it's the arm of the trade union movement, and it's as simple as that. But I'm not sure it is at the moment, and I think that's the problem. It should be as simple as it's the political arm of the trade union movement. And people like Peter Mandelson and Kiestarma and everybody else seem to be hell bent on making sure that it doesn't represent the trade union movement in any way beyond the usual kind of appearances sake kind of thing, where they'll like private companies badge themselves as NHS, but it's still private companies. The Labour Party wants to badge itself as the political arm of the trade union movement, really wants the trade union movement to be its poodle. And I think that you might be able to tell this really gets me worked up, but I'm a working class lad from the northeast of England, just across the river from Hartlepool, and I'm a Labour member still, and they may well kick me out for this, but I know and understand exactly why the people in Hartlepool decided to reject the Labour Party. I can't for the life of me understand why anybody in that area would ever vote for a Tory, but that just shows how badly Labour has done under Kiestarma in terms of trying to relate to people like that. And what a disaster that 1 year of Starmer's leadership has been, beyond pretty much anything you could think of, really. I mean, even going back to pre-war, with the kind of the turncoat Labour leadership at one point that was getting into bed with the Tories, etc. And and that was Ramsay Mcdonald, who was considered to be a disastrous Labour leader. And I think he doesn't get a look in compared to the current regime that's going on at the moment. And as so many people predicted, disastrous results. Rather than looking and saying, "Oh hell, we got it wrong, let's change course," their approach now is double down and do more of what's got them where they are now. And if they keep doing that, which I have no doubt that they will, then they'll get the arses handed to them in Batley and Spen and other places as well. And that's where I disagree. I depart from the stuff that's been put out by very good MPs like Diane Abbott, etc., where they've said that the Labour leadership needs to change its direction. No, the Labour Party needs to change its leadership, and I think it's as simple as that. Yeah,
no, I do agree with that. I mean, coming back to the point, though, that you disagreed with me on to start with, though, that Labour being the political arm of the trade union movement, I think perhaps the analogy is not quite as clear as you might have put it there, Steve, is that, where it comes to the NHS, and we had various private companies come over and take over chunks of it, it's not like the NHS has had any say in being able to stop that as an entity in and of itself. Whereas the trade union movement, who hand an awful lot of money to the Labour Party, can quite easily stop doing that and apply that pressure directly. They have got the clout to make the Labour leadership look up and change tack, or frankly, they can start again from scratch. I mean, they could if they wanted to. If things continue to decline and the party continues to falter under the current alleged leadership, shall we call it, then they're going to have not much option but to do that at some point, because their members need that representation in Parliament. If the current Labour Party has gone so far to the right that there's no coming back from it, there's no repairing it, they're going to end up being a party of donors and Tory lightism again. They're going to have to start again, and sadly, that's a long process. I think I saw on the Twitter feed today that the very first council that Labour ever won was Preston, was Durham, which is just lost overall control over. Thanks to this set of elections, the leadership of the Labour Party. But it took 19 years for them to get there. I mean, you start again from scratch. You start a new party. So many people say we should start a new socialist party, just leave Labour to collapse. It's not as simple as that, because it takes decades. And our electoral system is designed to stop them ever gaining traction. It's not an impossible task, but it's going to be a very, very time-consuming task. And in the meantime, you're going to have Tory rule end to end.
Yes. There's a question here from Brian Wakefield, who's watching the programme, who's saying, do we know how many members have left the Labour Party since Keir Starmer became leader? Well, very cautious efforts were, a couple of months ago were 100,000. Could well be far more than that. So, you're looking northward of 100,000 members who've left. And I suspect that you're talking 150,000 by the time you count the people who have let their memberships lapse simply by cancelling the direct debits, which takes about 6 months before the party officially recognises that those people have quit. One of the things that amused was, a rare bright spot yesterday in terms of Labour Party politics was Jeremy Corbyn deciding he was going to say it like it is, surprisingly directly for him, because he's usually, a very kind person, and he managed to do it in a very civil way, let's say. But he made sure that there was no kind of doubt as to where he stood on why Labour had done so badly in Hartlepool and elsewhere. And I'm just going to quickly play that, as long as it will work for us. And let's hear what Jeremy told Channel 4 yesterday.
I think what we need to do is think of the results, analyse the results, and respect what was said in the leadership campaign of January onwards of 2020, in which it was said that the manifesto on which we fought the 2019 election, those policies on investment, those policies on universal free broadband, those policies on a national education service should be stuck to. It's up to him what he decides to do. But the important thing is that this party represents a real, radical alternative to inspire people. Offering nothing, offering insipid support for the government, causes people either to vote for somebody else or simply to stay home and disappear.
Yeah, well said. Yeah, and I mean, two very, incontrovertible, really, home truths is what, brought up by Jeremy Corbyn there. One that, Kiestarma campaigned on a platform which turned out to be entire bull droppings, let's say. And, every single one of them... Every single one of them has been true. I'm thinking of YouTube, etc. Not banning us, But every single one of those got canned, and without ever seeing the light of day again. As soon as he got to be the leader, really, it's quite funny, really, because the details of who'd been donating to him only came out after the leadership contest was finished, whereas the pledges disappeared as soon as the leadership contest was finished. And also the fact that if you're offering people Tory light, they're going to go for the full fat version because they want something Tory. They're going to go for the real Tories, not for simply, failing to differentiate yourself from the Tories. And that is that's been the weakness and the cowardice, really, of the entire Starmer leadership, is this idea, presumably, endorsed by his, Lotto advisors, etc., that, you mustn't upset any right wingers. You mustn't say anything that's going to upset Middle England. You mustn't do it. Yeah. And in the end, he ends up terrified to say anything. I mean, God, it absolutely sticks in my craw to have to agree with anybody from UKIP. But one of these UKIP characters was challenging Starmer yesterday and saying, you were asked to give a specific example of a change that you would want to bring, and you couldn't name a single one. And I mean, that's the fact of it. He's terrified to name a change. He's terrified to say what he's actually, to actually stand for anything in case somebody doesn't like it. And I'm sorry, that is not leadership. And if, you shouldn't be wearing the badge and sitting in the seat if that's the best you've got to offer. No,
he wanted the job, but he's got no discernible skill or talent for it. And it's people from UKIP, they're certainly not the only people that are picking holes in Starmer and his lack of change. He was asked, what changes do you want to bring? And said, I'm going to bring the changes that need to be brought. Well, so what are the changes then? You just keep going around in circles. It's like trying to, I don't know, just trying to argue with a brick wall. You don't get any answers out of them. It's like he permanently thinks he's on Prime Minister's questions, and he's the one supposedly not answering the questions. It's just no, there's nothing to him. He's just an empty suit with a haircut. And that is all there is to it. There is no talents to the man. There's no leadership. There's no ideas. There's no passion. It's just bland on bland, like we said the other day. We need something to get our teeth into. We need something to get excited about. We need something to campaign on. I feel so sorry for all these campaigners, incidentally, that have worked their toes off throughout this campaign, actually, trying to get out get out on the Labour doorstep and try and get the votes in when they've had absolutely nothing to tell people what Labour would actually do. What a thankless, impossible task they've had. Starmer should be ashamed of himself, but there just seems to be no contrition at all, and just adamant he's going to carry on in the vein he's in.
Comment in here from Kailash Chand, who's a friend of the show, and he's said Andy Burnham's shown what leadership meant by advocating better jobs, better homes, better transport. And, in particular, Burnham stood up to the Tories on the issues of the furlough scheme. So when they screwed Manchester over by, withholding the furlough scheme and withholding the kind of lockdown provisions while they had Manchester in effectively a full lockdown. And then when they were pushing kids back into schools, he was standing up to them again on that. At the same time that Kiestarma and his Education Secretary, Kate Green, were actually siding with the Tories against the unions on the issues of face masks and safety in schools, etc. So, it turns out that because, the two places that Labour did well really were Manchester and in Wales. And it turns out that actually opposing the Tories and showing some leadership wins votes. Who'd have guessed it?
I don't know. Who'd have thunk that? I mean, dear Lord.
Bonnie, but you've seen what's been going on in London, where I think, again, we've seen a vacuum of genuine leadership and the mayorals. Tell us a little bit about your take on that from a Londoner point of view.
Well, we saw, I think, an awful lot of protest votes where people in London gave their first preference to somebody other than Sadiq Khan. London is a Labour city. It has always been, because it's full of working class people. Sadiq won that contest last year on the first round. This time, as I said before, he's had to rely on people's second preferences, because in canvassing and campaigning in this election, we've had to plead with people, okay, you don't like Sadiq, but please give him your second option. Please don't vote Tory. Please give him your second vote. We're back to the days of vote for the least worst option. And that is so depressing for activists like myself, to get up out of bed, to go before you start work, to go out, deliver those leaflets, make those phone calls, talk about politics incessantly with your local communities. There is no drive for that at all anymore. And thank goodness we've got this leadership election within Unite the Union for the new General Secretary. I mean, I have to say, I'm a bit concerned with some of the stories that have come out about Angela Rayner's behaviour during the election campaign as well. I read somewhere that she had claimed an extortionate amount to travel first class on the railway between constituencies. Why did she feel the need to do that? Jeremy Corbyn, in both of his leadership campaigns, travelled on the trains with people coming up talking to him, even when he was in meetings with his team preparing for rallies and interviews and so on. He sat there, he spoke with people. What on earth makes Angela Rayner so special that she's entitled to claim so much money to travel around the country? It's inexcusable. And I'm pretty sure after the betrayal of Kiestarma, I don't think any of us on this show bought into the idea that Kiestarma was going to be any form of socialist. But I think that a lot of people were willing to give him the benefit of the doubt with his talk of unifying the party, because let's face it, the left had been under a lot of attack for the 5 years previously. So I think a lot of people on the left just wanted an end to infighting. And what we've seen instead since his election is the purge of socialists, people being silent, shut down, kept out of meetings, told what they can discuss and debate in constituency Labour Party meetings and so on. I don't think that the remaining membership, unless they purge every single one of us on the left, will buy a second set of spin from somebody at the top table in the Labour Party as it is, because they have not opposed a single of the diabolical decisions that the Conservative government have made over this last year, a year when over 150,000 people have died that could have survived, that didn't need to die. And that is on the hands of the government, but also, I think, on the leadership of the Labour Party, because they're culpable in not calling it out.
It's one of the most angering things about Keir Starmer's entire tenure as leader, from my perspective. All these people have perished because of Tory incompetence, and he's made Labour complicit in it by backing them or abstaining on any action to speak out against it on the basis that we're in a pandemic and now is not the time. Well, I'm sorry, but when the country is in absolute crisis, it's now the time more than ever. It's the most important time to make sure the government are not doing anything pernicious. And slowly, drip, it seems to be every week we see it. We find out about another dodgy contract or another bit of corruption from the Conservatives as a result of it. And what he's done off the back of these elections and the way he seems to have scapegoated Angela Rayner yesterday, I have full sympathy with Rayner for what has been done to her. Do I think that she should be a suitable leader to run a challenge? No, I don't want to back her at all. No, nobody's going to forget her standing up and defending Corbyn's suspension and saying, I will suspend thousands of people if you dare speak out in solidarity with him. I mean, talk about being elevated by the former leader and then dumping on him from a great height. Yeah, the woman is ambition incarnate, just like Starmer. She's come off worse than over the last day, but neither of them are a viable candidate. I want to see a lefty come up and say, I'm going to put my hand up now. I don't know how much G are going to sit on their hands and not do anything, not say anything, and just, Bergen was on TV earlier, so talking a good talk, but not saying the one thing I want to hear. which is somebody in that group is going to go for it and they're going to call for Starmer's resignation. Hasn't happened yet, and I just don't know what it's going to take to shake this lot into action.
Well, you wonder when I'm going to pop this comment back up, Damon. It'll cut your face off. I'm sorry about this, but we've got the from Sue Butler pointing out that in Rotherham, I mean Rotherham in the heart of South Yorkshire mining territory, that the Orgreave scandal and everything else, now has 20 Tory councillors, and still just about controlled by the Labour Party, but 20 Tory councillors from zero before these elections. And if that's not enough to shake somebody into making a challenge on the leadership, then what is? But Rotherham is not that much out of the ordinary in that sense. We've seen Hartlepool, we've seen Durham. County Council has now, Labour's lost control of that for the first time in more than a century. We saw it go from no overall control to a Tory controlled council in Dudley. We saw disaster in Redditch. We've seen, we saw the big win for Burnham. We saw a good performance in Wales, but Liverpool, Labour had to, couldn't win on the first round, and had to go to a second round before they could, scrape over the line. Similarly in Bristol, and Bristol is now almost kind of split on council level between Labour and the Greens. So then we saw Starmer sacking Rayner, reportedly, and then apparently seeming to U-turn even on his sackings, and try and pretend that there were promotions or sideways moves or whatever. And you do have to wonder what, we're going to move on in a minute onto something more positive, but what would it take for somebody to say, look, we've got to use the what do you call it, the shepherd's crook, and yank him off the stage, because it just can't be allowed to continue. And I think that's the that's the long and the short. Let's look at something now that does show a bit of leadership and does have a bit of positivity and a bit of hope for the movement. Howard Beckett's campaign start, which I think has stunned his rivals and delighted his supporters in terms of nominations. And obviously, last night we saw the manifesto launch. So who got to watch that last night?
Yeah, it was brilliant.
Tell us what you thought, Bonnie.
Well, obviously, speaking in a personal capacity, have to make that clear. I am so thrilled that we have got a candidate running for the largest union in our country, a very powerful position, who will hold the fire to the feet to Kiestarma. His manifesto is, well, basically it encompasses an awful lot of those brilliant policies of 17 and 19. He is going to work to strip out the profiteers and privatisers in the NHS, which a lot of people will know that is my, one of my big passions. But what I also think in his manifesto that's extremely exciting is the idea of free family membership. Members of Unite the Union will be able to enrol their children into the union, because one of the challenges that trade unionism has faced is that young people now, when they leave school and go into their first work, there isn't necessarily that history of joining a union the day you sign your contract to start a new job. But if we can get families involved and engaged in trade unionism, in collectivism and in socialism, then we've got a really bright future. As a parent, I've been very frustrated that when I take my children to school and I talk with the other parents on the school playground, a lot of the parents feel quite disconnected to politics and trade unionism. But their concern is for the well-being and the future of their children or their grandchildren, because there's a lot of grandparents do the school runs these days as well. And I think it would be absolutely fantastic if parents on the school gate were able to get involved in collective activity that could do things like defend the education unions when they're saying it's not safe for your children to come to school at the moment. Parents should be able to collectivise around that. And I think that we'll be able to get that through Unite under Howard. And I haven't felt this excited about a leadership contest since 2015 and 2016 for Jeremy. I think it's great. Thank goodness.
I think it's brilliant. We've got this wonderful manifesto that he set out, and isn't it nice to have a manifesto with policies in it, the things you get excited about again? Think, oh, I like that idea. Oh, that's a nice idea. I like that one. You mentioned about the family memberships. The one thing that struck me, I quite liked about this is it's young people, but it's making available free memberships to demographics like students, particularly student nurses, student paramedics, apprentices, for example. I would be quite interested to see if that gets fleshed out, because I can remember being an apprentice myself being in a union, I wasn't allowed to say as an apprentice. I'm wondering if there's going to be whether Unite are going to look at that, and whether you can be a member as an apprentice, but still have an equal say to a full tradesman, for example. But the one thing that I'm quite excited about, because it reflects really on what got me into social media and making videos and stuff like that, and it's the Unite TV. I started out making stupid videos complaining about the world around me because the news wasn't going to do it, and nobody seemed to be doing it. So I basically vent my spleen on social media. But Howard Beckett is proposing Unite TV, and which is a fantastic idea, because a trade union, this is a huge body. There's a lot of money in the trade union movement, and really to challenge billionaire-owned mass media, which is all we seem to get fed in this country. It can only be the trade union movement that are going to be able to go toe to toe with that financially, as well as figuratively, and produce such a thing. And I sincerely hope we see other trade unions pick up the baton as well. Howard Beckett, Kiestarma's nightmare. I don't think anybody could get a better title than that right now, because if you want to win a vote, I mean, you can't stand Kiestarma and you're in Unite. Yeah. Howard, your man.
Yes.
Sorry, go on.
No, go on. You go, Bonnie.
I was just going to say, it's such a contrast to some of the other candidates in this contest that Keir. What am I saying? That Keir is going to be challenged by Howard. The other candidates have made it perfectly clear that they would rather have sort of quiet conversations behind closed doors. No, this has been done to us in plain sight, in full view. People their attention needs to be drawn to what's happening. Politics affects every single aspect of our life, from where we buy our food to what shoes we have on our feet, to what schools we send our kids to. It's every part of our lives. Trade unionism also impacts every part of our life. It's a complete false narrative to suggest that those two factors could ever be separate, and anyone pretending that they are separate things is taking you for a ride.
Yeah, it's a trade. If everything in life wasn't political, then why would trade unions have ever bothered to set the Labour Party up to start with? It comes down to
I think for me, the key thing that so far has been how, that the level of smears that have been thrown at him is it hasn't gone as far yet as the smears against Jeremy Corbyn, but it's in that direction. And, that suggests how worried they are, his rivals and the establishment about the fact that he, the idea of him running the union, because, we've seen the smears about all sorts of things, which he took on in a program with you, Demo, and put them all to bed. So I'm not going to rehash those, but the one I do want to just look at is, the one that they were pushing really hard just in the run up to the election. And, this was the idea that Howard wanted to, end the unique Unite community section for unwaged people that allows, people who are not in paid employment to still participate in the union movement and play a full role in that. And, Howard came out very strongly on that, but it wasn't just a new reaction to that. It was something he's been saying since long before this campaign ever started, that he wants to build up community. And the thing that has really pleased me one thing that has really pleased me in this last few days has been the fact that I think there's 3 Unite community branches have voted strongly for Howard to nominate Howard in this contest. And while I haven't checked this afternoon because I was out, but last night when I looked, none of the other candidates still had any not branch nominations yet, and Howard was up to, I think, 10 now, maybe more than that. But we saw the Unite community branch in Ireland be unanimous. We saw the Unite community branch in the southwest of England, was it Bath and Bristol or Bristol and Gloucester? I forget which one. That was 3-1 in favour of nominating Howard Beckett, and then we saw another one, I think, in the East Midlands. And the other thing has been that that Beckett's opponents and critics have been claiming that he wouldn't get nominations from across the country. It would be focused on Scotland and Wales. I mean, it's not absolutely not a bad thing for Scotland and Wales and Ireland to be supporting somebody. I would welcome that. But, we've seen Coventry Building Society, I think it was, or was that? Yeah, it might have been an endorsement from the branch secretary there, actually. But, we've seen the East Midlands people. We've seen the NHS branch in Leicester and Northamptonshire. We've seen, so there's been a good level of nominations coming through from all of the UK nations. And, I think, again, that has stunned the people who were desperately hoping that he wasn't going to be, going to be the strong contender in this contest, So
I think that's what's generating a lot of
me,
Sorry.
No, I was just going to say the smear hasn't stuck. Certainly,
yeah, I was going to say,
so far,
I think it's their absolute terror of the fact there's going to be a sort of anti-establishment forerunner in this contest that's making them throw quite so much mud around, and none of it is going to stick because all of it is baseless. I can't wait for Howard to lead the union that I'm very proud to belong to.
Yeah, I'm quite affronted by the attacks that have been made on Howard Beckett regarding the community branches and the threat to them that allegedly he represented. The very first interview I ever did, way before I even started with Socialist Telly, was with Howard Beckett when he was running for the United Left nomination. And I questioned him on it at the time as to whether the community branch was safe in his hands. And he said, uncategorically, yes. I had to repeat this with the interview I did the other week, hauling him over hot coals, putting every one of these horrible smears to him. And again, he gave the same answer. I am committed to community. And it has heartened me that these smears have not taken hold. The very first branch to nominate Howard was the Bath and Bristol community branch. My community chance, because I am a community member myself, Cornwall branch, community branch, we're having ours on Wednesday. So if any Cornwall Community Unite members are watching this, make sure you're at that meeting, please, because I'm going to be there and we're going to get this nomination sorted there too. I hope, because I should be definitely attending to speak up for Howard Beckett, because I know community membership is safe in his hands. Is going to be expanded in his hands, and he's going, and he is becoming this anti-establishment candidate now, as Bonnie has said, to buck the trend, to push back against this drivel of leadership that we're seeing from the Labour Party itself. You've got a choice between, if there's 4 people who put their names in the air, you've only got one that's really going to haul Kiestarma over hot coals. So if you want to see the Labour Party put in its place and have somebody telling it like it is, no holds barred, you've only got to look at Howard Beckett's Twitter feed to see he doesn't mince his words. He says things as they are, for heaven's sake. And I wholeheartedly support him and completely trust him with my community membership.
Yeah, brilliant
Steve,
comment in here from Ali. Go on, Bonnie.
I was just going to say, you invited the candidates on to do a show on Socialist Telly, didn't you?
Yeah, I'll read this comment, then we'll give that a plug in a minute because there's an update on that. But brilliant comment in here from Ali. The idea of unions not engaging in Westminster is absurd when corporations spend billions lobbying there. Without a counterbalance, you lose legal worker rights and pretensions. I think that nails it. That hits nail, hammerhead, etc. In terms of, yes, there will be tomorrow a hustings program, which was originally going to take place last week, but we delayed it to give the other candidates chance to say they were going to take part. And I'll give a little plug for that. So that's 7:30 tomorrow night. We're going to have what is essentially a hustings program, but it will be the chance for Socialist Telly and viewers on the program to put their questions to Howard Beckett, because so far none of the other candidates in the contest have agreed to come on the program. And we invited everybody. We even said, to Gerard Coyne that, he was invited. We invited Steve Turner, we invited Sharon Graham. None of them have said they'll come on. Only one of them responded, and that was Sharon Graham's campaign, who said she wasn't free on the original date. So we offered them flexibility on the dates, and they haven't responded to that offer yet. If they tried to claim that they thought they might get an unfair treatment on here, that doesn't wash, because we even offered them their choice of chair to say, look, pick an independent chair and you can have that person on. We'll get somebody on that you want to chair that discussion, so that nobody can say that we were trying to slant it against you or whatever. And, you know, we wouldn't anyway, because we want to hear from all the candidates, and everybody deserves their fair opportunity to say their piece. You know, there is, 24 hours to go, give or take, until that program is on. If any of you are listening, you other three candidates out there, the members, and I think everybody here is a Unite member. You know, I think everybody involved in Socialist Telly is a Unite member. There are hundreds of Socialist Telly members who watch this, probably thousands who watch this, who are Unite members. And we want to hear from you why you think you should be running this union, because we're hearing from Howard Beckett, and, you know, purely for the democracy of the union, everybody else should have the chance to, you know, one, hear what what your vision is for the union, but two, grill you over the issues that they might have with you in the same way that Howard Beckett has faced the grilling so far. So front up, you've got our email, because we've emailed you offering you this opportunity. Get yourselves on the program, and let's make it a proper debate tomorrow, rather than a chance for Howard to just talk and, you know, have an unopposed run at saying what he wants to say, because, you know, it would be better for it to be a debate, but we're not going to deprive him of the opportunity to say his piece because nobody else is prepared to, to front up and actually get on the program. So reconsider that. You're doing yourselves a disservice. You're doing the union members a disservice, and the Labour movement in general a disservice. And, you know, book your ideas up, frankly. Get yourselves on.
Howard's Twitter feed has been absolutely on fire the last few days. I don't know if anyone else has spotted it. I mean, one of the best tweets I think that he's put out today is advising everybody that next week the Conservatives are going to put through a bill that will increase the privatisation of our NHS. I'm so glad that Howard's doing that. No one else, either from within the Unite contest or from the Labour Party, be they the apparent leader of the Labour Party or the Shadow Minister for Health or anybody, is calling out this dangerous legislation for what it is. People need to be aware of what's being done. And I'm very concerned that Keir will be whipping the Labour Party, Parliamentary Party, to abstain once again. Absolutely.
And, yes. And it's something that's just popped up in the comments there from Vic, claiming that, you know, that Howard, by standing in this contest, is splitting the vote. And I would just say, you know, bollocks to that, frankly. Not to put too fine a point on it, seeing as we're into plain speaking, plain working class speaking on this channel. The United Left hustings, as they called them last year, were a farce. Howard Beckett would have won that, except for a large number of his supporters were deprived of their proper entitlement to vote. And I've covered that on Squawk Box, and I have tried. The UL people have insisted that it was correct, but refused and actually sacked. Kicked out, expelled their entire Scottish section, because the Scottish section wanted transparency on that process and wanted a proper investigation. They told everybody in Wales that if they weren't prepared to toe the line, they were automatically going to be kicked out. And then they've told other people in the English UL that is the case. So and quite a lot of people, including the whole Northwest branch, have said, sack that. We're going to support who we want, and do your damnedest. So, the idea that there's the one small group which can't, which is split and turned against it, the vast majority of its members, as I understand it, and kicked them out because they wanted scrutiny on a questionable, let's be fair, let's be kind rather, questionable ballot. Let's kick them out rather than actually show that our ballot would stand up to that scrutiny. That's just silly.
I think comments like that, Steve, that came in that you're just discussing, show a terribly high level of some form of arrogance, that some candidate has got more right to stand in a certain position for a certain position than another person. Actually, the membership of Unite the Union will decide who they want to support, and I firmly believe that they will decide to support the person who is going to stand up for workers' rights, which is obviously Howard Beckett.
Yeah, I've got to say, one of my favourite tweets today, I've got to read this out because it was belting. Whoever talks to Mandelson in Starmer's office, please remind him that Labour's formation was by the workers, for the workers, and then delete his number. That sum up the man entirely today. I don't know what does, but that made me laugh out loud today. And that doesn't always happen, but it's bang on the money.
Tracy Brabin has been confirmed now as the West Yorkshire Mayor. Somebody's been saying, so that means that we're triggering.
My election,
Going to have to say. Well, it'd be interesting to see whether they go for the similar kind of mistake of having a short campaign or whatever on the by-election there, or whether they hope that if they take longer, that people might have forgotten how badly they did in Hartlepool, etc. But
Paul Williams is still available.
Oh dear me. Oh dear. Yeah. So well, I mean,
they did the same thing though. Even if it's not Paul, I don't think it would be Paul. But it would not surprise me one iota if they repeat the mistake of parachuting somebody in again.
Maybe Mandy.
Yeah, well, I mean, there is already talk in the area, apparently, of them wanting a shortlist of possibly one person again. And democratic socialism, it still says that on the membership card, I gather, and it's not, And if you want to kick me out for that, go for it. I'm almost beyond caring now, really. But the Unite, let's not get sidetracked from the positive stuff. The Unite leadership election and the Beckett campaign, I think, has been an absolute shot in the arm. His approach to politics has been a breath of fresh air at every level. We see, we're starting to understand, I think, the level of involvement that Howard Beckett has had in, a lot of the key victories for the union over the past months. And we're seeing that coming out in some of the endorsements as well. So we've seen, him getting endorsed by and nominated as well by Ineos, Petro Ineos in Scotland. We've seen personal endorsements for Howard coming from, people from bin workers, from people working in financial services, from people working in the offshore industry, from and to pretty much every kind of work you could think of that Unite might cover, and people who are not in paid work, like yourself, Dama, who are working their guts out and not even getting paid for it, or disabled people or retired people, etc., etc., etc. So, that to me speaks volumes that this isn't some kind of niche candidate who's got a particular kind of strong enclave somewhere in a particular branch or industry, and that's where their support lies. Is somebody who appeals to the movement across the board and to the union members across the board. So that's that to me is refreshing. That actually gives me hope, because if somebody who's not prepared to stand up and be counted gets the leadership of Unite, you wonder how the movement's going to cope with that, because there are some fantastic other union leaders out there as well, but they're not running unions with the size and clout of Unite, and that's critical.
Yeah, really
there's I think the number of people that have signed up to help on the campaign for Howard is quite phenomenal too. Thousands of people so far have signed up either via the website or his social media on Facebook and Twitter. So if anyone watching this wants to get more involved, please do have a look at the social media and sign up as a person to help with the campaign. And also on his website, just a little plug, you'll see the manifesto, and after each pledge there are videos for people who might be sight restricted. They can hear Howard speaking himself to the points he's going to campaign on if he gets elected as General Secretary of Unite.
Yes, and we'll just flag up, we're now in the swing of the nominations period, which lasts from last week through to, I think it's the 7th of June. So, you've got to make sure, and there are obstacles in the way. It's not the easiest thing to identify who your branch secretary is if you're not in a workplace branch where you're speaking to the branch secretary every day. Pester the life out of your local Unite office until you get in touch with the secretary. Make sure that your secretary has is going to organize a meeting and communicate that to everybody, because we have had reports that some branches are not informing the members about meetings that are taking place. There is a form on the website, beckettforunite.co.uk/nomination, which gives you details on the nominating process and the form that the nomination has to take. If you want to get involved in the campaign, it's beckettforunite.co.uk/get-involved. Make sure that Sorry, I'm being slightly distracted by a grammar spat going on among Vic and some of his critics now there on the in the comments. I'm not gonna put those up. Tempted though it is. Do make sure if you back Howard Beckett that you get involved. That's the website to get involved, and you'll find obviously the other pages on there with the manifesto. So /manifesto/nomination, etc. in order to get involved in that. And obviously one of the campaigns which Howard is running, but some of the other candidates are trying to take credit for, the Unite campaign against fire and rehire, which is one of the scandals of our time. And, sadly, we've seen Labour-run organisations also behaving in this way, including, not so much fire and rehire, but just fire and get rid by the Labour Party as well. Which shows
that's what's happened to Rayner, isn't it? Fire and rehire.
Well, that's what they're trying to. Yeah, they just fired her, and then they're trying to rehire her now in a different position, something to cover Kiestarma's blushes by the looks of it. So I think that's we'll see how that all unfolds. But certainly the level of unrest in the Labour Party is significant. But we need positive, people. We need people who are prepared to stand up and make a difference. And actually, where Kiestarma refused to name a single change that he would make, except the change that needs to be made, and that's the change that I will make, whatever the hell that means. But we've seen Howard Beckett, in the Unite contest, actually list and say, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, I'm going to, from the very nitty gritty stuff of, increasing the kind of availability of creches so women can get more involved, to equalities, to industrial, to the political influence, to Unite Telly. That's a man with a vision, and God, we need a man with a vision. In a prominent position in the Labour movement at the moment. So, if anybody's watching from Howard's campaign, you want to make that a clip of an endorsement from me, then feel free to do so. Right. Any other things we need to cover? Any other things we need to cover before we round off and let people get on with their evening, or better still, get ready for Pint and Politics, which is coming in about 25 minutes.
What was it you said, Damo?
I said it better fit Kiestarma took a leaf out of Howard's book, and then perhaps he wouldn't be faced with such a nightmare scenario. But if there's anybody I'd really quite like to take a leaf out of Howard Beckett's book right now, it's the Socialist Campaign Group of Labour MPs. This is a man who is saying exactly what he's going to do. This is a man who's not afraid to challenge the powers that be within the trade union movement or the Labour Party. And we need somebody from your group to stand up now and present an alternative to more of Kiestarma and the lack of anything that represents. So, the ball's in your courts, guys. You're being shown up by the trade union movement at the moment. You're supposed to be the political arm of the trade union movement. You're supposed to be doing the politics bits, guys. So, stop leaving it all up to Howard. Good at it as he is. It's your job. You get paid handsomely to do it. So do it.
Keir, if you're watching, and we know you do sometimes, delete Peter Mandelson's number. That's the best thing that you can possibly do for the party at the minute, and probably for the country as well. I think we'll round off there just to make sure that we clear the airwaves in time for Pint and Politics coming next. Just one more plug then, 7:30 p.m. tomorrow on facebook.com/Squawkbox and on Socialist Telly on Twitter and on YouTube. That will be the Unite hustings, and we'll see whether that's going to be the one-man Beckett show where he gets a chance to tell you what he's about, or whether any of the others will actually come and face up and see if they can face him down. That will be an interesting evening either way, I think. And keep watching Socialist Telly. Don't forget to spread the word, hit the notification bell, etc., etc. And we've got Damo on here. Do make sure that you check out his output. And if you can afford to, sign up on his Patreon so that he gets the support he needs to keep doing what he's doing as one of the unsung stars, hopefully not for much longer, unsung stars of the left of the Labour movement. Thank you for watching, everybody.
Something's about a left unsung.
Thank you for watching, everybody, and thank you for your time. Thank you for all the comments. We didn't get a chance to cover everybody's, but what we did get a chance to put in was certainly enhanced the program. And I'll see you tomorrow, and we'll see you again through the course of the week. Take care of yourself.